One Winnebago County resident is concerned about how inmates are treated at the county's Juvenile Detention Center and plans to address some of those issues at tonight's Winnebago County Board meeting.
This comes after Debbie Jarvis talked about the state of the Winnebago County Juvenile Detention Center in late January following the release of a report from a statewide agency.
This resident claims some of the programs in place should be eliminated. People are held in their rooms for extended periods of time and some issues with staff. Jarvis says some issues in the report have been addressed since the state visited the center in June and when the report was released a couple of months later, including mental health services.
It took a long time to be able to find therapists who would work at the detention center. The report says that's not there, and it has obviously changed, but that was something that we had recognized even before the report came out, and it had been working to find a solution for over a year to that problem.